Hey babe, I'm going for a ride, alright?
Sure. Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the story anyway about the yellow jersey?
You want to know about the yellow jersey? Well, let me tell you the story of the yellow jersey. Do you know that it is the most recognized, the most coveted prize in the entire sport of cycling? But you know what? Wasn't always the case. As a matter of fact, during the first Tour de France in 1903, the race leader simply wore a little green armband, which was very difficult to see. So the journalists and the spectators complained about that. And it's not until 10 years later, in 1913, that the inventor and first organizer of the Tour, Henri Desgranges, decided to ask the Belgian rider, Philippe Thys, who was leading the Tour at the time, to wear a yellow jersey so he could be more clearly identified. But there's a bit of unclarity about why did he choose yellow. There are actually two competing stories that explain why he chose yellow. Yeah. Are you interested in knowing a little more?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, so back in those days, a stage of the Tour was well in excess of 200 miles per day. Can you imagine that?
No.
Now, if you consider that the average speed of the 1913 Tour winner was just under 17 miles per hour, if you do the math, that meant that it took at least 12 hours to complete a stage. So it's no wonder that as a result, the start of each stage was a very early affair. That would took place in the darkness. They wanted to make sure that the spectator could enjoy the finish during daytime hours.
Sure.
Does it make sense? So Henri Desgranges picked yellow, as one of the stories goes, so it would be easier to see in the dark. Now, the other story, which is generally believed to be the most probably one, is simply that the yellow was the color of the sport newspaper L'Auto, which was the main sponsor of the race. Even though Philippe Thys confirmed that he was asked to wear a yellow jersey at the 1913 Tour de France, babe, during an interview late in his life, unfortunately there was never any mention of a yellow jersey that could be found in any of the newspapers of the day. So that casted some doubt as to the veracity of his account. Very unfortunate. So, when did the first ever mention of the yellow jersey of the press took place? That's in 1919. And when the Tour resumed after going on a 4-year hiatus due to World War I, and at 2 a.m. on July 18, 1919, the leader of the race, Eugene Christophe, was asked by Henri Desgranges to wear a yellow jersey. But you know what? He was not a happy camper. He thought he looked completely ridiculous. He complained that he resembled a canary. And actually the fan would imitate the sound of a canary every time he rode by, which was embarrassing, and he was quickly named Cri-Cri. On top of that, he was concerned that if he wore yellow, he was going to be a marked man, which was going to make it much more difficult for him to launch an assault and to break away from the peloton. But despite all the controversies, one of the most iconic pieces of clothing, babe, was born. And even the other Grand Tour, like the Giro and the Vuelta, quickly follow suit by asking their respective race leader to wear pink for the Giro and red for the Vuelta. The first pink jersey was worn in 1931, and the first red jersey for the Vuelta, actually, you have to wait until 2010.
Wow.
Henri Desgranges died in 1940, a little sad, and in his honor, the succeeding organizer of the Tour decided in 1948 that his initial HD would be embroidered on every yellow jersey going forward.
Interesting.
Isn't it?
Yes. Never
And
noticed that.
to this day, if you pay attention, you can still see the HD initial embroidered on the yellow jersey right next to the logo of the Tour de France. Pay attention next time you watch the race. And last thing, babe, the great Eddy Merckx is the absolute record holder for the longest time in yellow with, guess how many days?
I have no idea.
96 days in yellow.
Wow.
Remarkable. Now, Lance Armstrong comes in as a close second with 83 days, but you know what happened with Lance Armstrong, right? Maybe he was disqualified.
What year was Eddie Merckx?
It was in the 1960s. And that is the story of the yellow jersey.
Thank you.
Now you're very welcome.
Enjoy your ride.
I certainly will.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All the things you do, and it was called yellow. So then I took my turn. Oh, what a thing to have done. And it was all